get back in the routine. Some people have come to class with their lazy boy recliners, and they just like to watch. They really don't do the Tai Chi. There's benefits in that too. So I say all those things to say there's something for everybody. There's a way that we can modify the program for you where you can get the benefits of the program. We want to always keep in mind our principles, and that is that we move slow, smooth, and continuous. We'll talk more about gentle resistance, but we do want to really focus on this upright posture, because anytime we're leaning, we may be going towards falling. And so we want to keep upright and have our bodies over top of our hips, relax shoulders. And what's really important to help us with falls prevention is strengthening the muscles in our legs, strengthening the muscles that surround our joints, especially our weight-bearing joints like our hips, knees, and ankles. When those muscles support the joints because they're stronger, then we're less likely to fall and we're less likely to have pain from the inflammation of the joint or from your arthritis. And so what I was telling you a while ago was seated, standing with a chair, or just standing without assistance Tai Chi, that weight transfer, pushing those foot into the floor or shifting weight from one foot and shifting weight to the other foot, that's where that magic happens. So however you can comfortably transfer weight, that's how you're going to get stronger and you'll be less likely to fall. So if that means skipping the arm movements, holding on to a sturdy table or chair and shifting weight from one leg to the other, whatever it takes for you to experience weight transfer, I want you to find that place so that you can get stronger. And then we'll talk when I tell you about especially your knees and your elbows, to not lock those joints. So we keep a soft bend in our elbow. And the best way I can demonstrate that is when our elbows are locked, we look like Frankenstein. We're locked out. But when they're soft, it's like this. So you can look, you see a soft bend in that elbow. So anytime we extend our arms, we have that soft bend. We're never Frankenstein where we're locking our elbows. And that usually happens with our elbows and our knees. And so with our knees, we're not in a squat. We just have that soft bend there. So versus locked knees where our knees are completely, or our legs are completely straight. When we have a soft bend in our knees, it allows energy to flow in our bodies, but it also allows us to absorb any type of impact. Say someone running into us. I think about when we're out and about in the world, specifically, I think about Walmart. Somebody runs into you. If you have a nice soft bend, a nice stable stance, you can absorb impact and not fall. Whether you're having this stable stance where your feet are at hip width apart, or if you're in a staggered stance where one foot is a little bit further up than the other one, that soft bend, someone hits into you, you can bend that knee into it. You're less likely to fall. So open those joints, keep that nice soft bend in your elbow. All right, let me get Sharon in. Okay, this is, there we go. All right, so we start off all of our classes by warming up, walking around for a few minutes. I like to open and close my hands. I also like to bend my elbows. However you feel comfortable to get your body warmed up and ready for movement. If we exercise with cold muscles, then we increase our chance of injury. And so that's why we spend a little time warming up. It's also why I bring that heater into my space and heat up the air in my room, especially when it's cold outside. The summertime is a little bit different because the air is already warm. So you can actually spend less time warming up, but you never want to exercise with cold muscles. So you don't want to get hurt. So we warm up and then we'll do our stretches of our major joints, including our neck, shoulders, spine, hips, knees, and ankles. And then today we'll start learning our series of movements. Now, I'm going back and forth. If I were in a class, I would probably walk around the room and not walk backwards. But because I have my camera, I can see, and I know that that chair is behind me, but how far behind me it is. The main thing is I don't want you to walk backwards and fall over something because you can't see it. So always be thinking about that, your environment that you're in. What is in the floor? What is in your way? Is there anything that you can move so that it's not a distraction? Maybe somebody's been at your house lately. I think of little kids. They like to leave little toys around. Just make sure that there's nothing on your floor for you to trip, step on, fall over. That's just a habit that we want to have each time we go into a new space. All right, so let's get in our nice stable stance for us to start our warm-up stretches, starting with our neck. My feet are about shoulder width or hip width apart. My weight is on both feet. I have a soft bend in my knee. No tension in my shoulders. And I'm going to make an effort to breathe throughout my movements. I know sometimes when we're learning something new, we tend to hold our breath. So make that effort to breathe. And when we breathe, we want to inhale and completely fill our lungs with air, and exhale, completely emptying our lungs with air. You can play around with how you like to breathe. If you like to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth, or which variation that you like to breathe from. Main thing is just breathe at your own pace. Starting with our neck, let's bring our hands up, palms down. Turn, move those hands, pull towards your chin and chest. Push away from our bodies, and then follow those hands all the way down, chin towards your chest. Come back up. Pull, push, follow those hands all the way down. Breathing, inhaling and exhaling at your own pace as you go through these movements to warm up your neck. Our other neck exercise starts out the same way. And when we get here, we drop one hand to our hip, and the other hand we follow with our head as we look towards our shoulder. We feel a slight stretch, and we come back to the front, switch hands, and look towards the other shoulder. You don't have to go as far as you can go. Just go until you feel a slight stretch. Now, if you're doing this seated, you don't have anything going on with your legs. This is often a good time to start seated and then stand up when we get to our lower body movements, because we don't have any lower body movements with these. So it would look the same if you were doing it from a seated position. The first one, where we come here, push, and follow down. The second one, we come up, towards, drop, look. The more you do this, the more improvement you'll have in the neck mobility. Also, it will help reduce the tension in your neck. Sometimes we have a lot of stiffness or tension in our joints. And if we practice these stretches daily, then we can have less tension in those spots. So that's how it looks seated. Not different, not much different than the way it looks standing, because there's no leg movement. It's all upper body. Same thing with our next. For our shoulders, we have our hands to our side, and we're going to roll forward. And I think about drawing circles on the side of my legs, about the size of a quarter. Roll forward, and then roll back. This feels kind of like a massage you give yourself. Miss Linda, you know, I'm thinking about this. I think I did tell you class was going to restart on the 16th. I must have just started a week early.
Maybe so. I don't know. I just remember the 16th.
Calendar, and I'm like, she's right. I think I did say that. My calendar's over here on this table. Because if anything's ever coming up, I like to know my calendar's here. There may be times when I have to cancel class for different reasons, but right now I don't foresee that. So those help warm up our shoulders. Looks the same as if we're seated. Now we're going to do a shoulder circle. We bring our hands up, palms up, and then we turn and push those hands down. We come up and we push down. Now this is a good time to practice breath, where we inhale as you come up and exhale as you push down. You can go at a different paces than me because your breathing may be a little different. And there's no problem with that. When we talk about gentle resistance, it's as if we're moving through heavy air or water or jello, if you want to be funny. But we bring those hands up as if we're pushing against a resistance and then push down as if something is keeping us. Just like if it was water, if we were in water and we pushed our hands down, that's that gentle resistance. So when I refer to gentle resistance, that's what I'm talking about. It's moving as if the air's heavy or moving as if we're in water. And that engages muscle, more muscle than we would actually need for this movement. But by engaging more muscle, then we get those muscles stronger. So it's kind of a twofer, right? So those two are for our shoulders. Again, if you do it seated, it looks the same. When we roll those shoulders, different is our circle is kind of in a different spot because our legs are bent. And then roll those shoulders back. And then the other one where we come up and push down. So see, nothing different, just making sure our feet are grounded and we have that good posture. Next is for our spine. And so that involves holding a ball. Now we can hold this ball wherever we feel comfortable as long as we're not holding tension in our shoulders. The hand that's on, excuse me, the hand that's on top of our ball is going to push down towards the ground. Remember, keeping that soft bend in the elbow. The hand that's on bottom of the ball is going to come up and push up towards the ceiling. You see that nice soft bend. So I'm pushing up and down at the same time, which stretches my spine vertically. Come back to my ball and switch. So the other hand pushes up and this hand pushes down. Back to the ball and switch. Ball and switch. This is a good stretch you do in the morning when you get out of bed. To really let that spine breathe. Even though your spine doesn't have a nose or a respiratory system. But you think about all those little bones in your spine, and this helps give it space. You know, as we get older, our bodies settle just like a house, and that's why we get shorter. our spine settle. And so this helps stretch that spine back out. So if you're doing it seated, it looks the same way. Here. Soft bend in our elbow. Here. Okay. The next one for our spine involves our ball, and we're going to take this ball from side to side. The hand that's on top is the direction we're going, so that guides us. And we take it for a very small trip. So we move this way to just above that knee. Then we turn our hands and come back across to just above the other knee. So we're not going as far as we can go. We're just going enough to stretch that spine horizontally. If we were to go further, we may start hurting our spine, kind of pulling on it. We may even feel some pull in our knee. So it's just a short trip side to side. This movement prepares us for a movement we'll learn in a few weeks called waving hands in clouds. So notice that it's only your torso moving. Your hands are just along for the ride. So I'm moving my torso and my ball's going along for the ride. I change my hands. I move my torso and my hands go along for the ride. Here's what it looks like if you were moving your hands. My torso is going to stay still. It's going to stay in the same place. And I'm moving my hands. Now, this is supposed to be a spinal stretch. So if I were to do it this way, the movement is happening in my shoulders. That does nothing for my spine. So I need to move my torso side to side. My legs are staying forward. My knees are staying forward. When you first learn it, it may be easier to do it seated because your legs are sticking out and you may be able to see your knees out of your periphery. When you're standing, you can't see your knees. I have the luxury of a video, so I can see whenever I get just above that knee. But here I have my ball, and it may be easier too to isolate your torso whenever you're seated versus standing to get you ready for that, yes, the spinal movement, but later when we do waving hands in clouds, you understand that it's your torso moving, your hands are going along for the ride, your legs and hips are staying in the same place. Any questions about those? Those are our upper body warm-up stretches. That was our necks. I always say necks. We only have one. We have 2 stretches for our neck. We have 2 for our shoulders, and we have 2 for our spine. And so those are the movements there. Any questions about those?
Oh,
Very good. Next is for our lower body. Now, this is where it gets complicated. You know, I told you in the beginning, we were doing those upper body warm-up stretches. That's a good time to start seated if you have problems with endurance or strength. But when it comes to our lower body movements, it's not the same done standing as done seated. Understandably, because we can't move our hips the same way seated or else we'll fall out of our chair. So I'll show you the difference in the movements. The first 2 are for our hips. Okay, so this is our weight-bearing joint, or one of our weight-bearing joints. So you can do it standing without assistance. You can do it with your chair, and this is my invisible chair I'm holding on to. You can totally skip the arm movements and hold on to your chair. What's so important in this section is transferring weight. And so however we can make that happen, that's what we want to happen. If you do it seated, then you can do some hand movements, but then you have leg movements as well. So here's what the first seated hip, or first hip movement looks like seated. So I'm going to bring my heel forward and my hands are going to come back behind me. And then I'm going to come back to a seated position and my hands are going to come forward. Now I'm going to put the heel back or the other heel out and hands back, back to seated position with my hands forward. Now when one foot was moving, so when I put that heel out, this other leg was pushed into the floor. Now you're in control of how much pressure you apply to pushing that foot into the floor. So whatever you feel comfortable with. You may not want to, but if you give it a try, you'll realize that pushing that foot into the floor, even if it's a little bit, helps be a stabilizer for you. Just like a cane or assistive device, it helps stabilize you while you move this other leg out and back in. So that's what it looks like. Push this foot into the floor, heel forward, hands back, and back to seated position. Push this foot into the floor, heel forward, hands back, back to seated position. So that's the seated version of the hip movement. The standing version asks us to transfer weight and move the other leg. So we shift weight to one leg, we place the heel forward and our hands go back. We pause in the middle, and now we're going to put the toe back and hands forward. Now notice I didn't go straight back with my foot. I went out at an angle as if it were a kickstand on a bike. And that's more stable, let me hold on to the wall, than if I were to put it straight back. Putting it straight back is like standing with our feet really close together. It's not very stable. So I have heel forward, hands back, pause in the middle, and toe back, hands forward. Pause in the middle, heel forward, hands back, pause in the middle, and toe back, hands forward. You can hold on to the chair and skip that arm movement. Notice I did that 3 times. So that's how you practice the movement for endurance. Now we're going to shift weight to this leg. Heel forward, hands back, pause in the middle, toe back at that angle like a kickstand, hands forward, pause in the middle, heel forward, hands back, pause, toe back, hands forward, and one more, back to center, heel forward, hands back, pause, and toe back, hands forward. So that's how we do that movement and practice endurance. There's another way to do that movement that helps you practice more weight transfer. So rather than doing 3 in a row, where I did heel, middle, toe, heel, or middle, heel, 3 in a row, I can shift, heel, pause, toe, back to center, shift, heel, pause, toe. I'm going to add the hand movements. Shift, heel, pause, toe, center, shift, heel, pause, toe. See how much more weight shifting that is? So this gives you the opportunity to increase your strength through weight transfer. Are you getting practice and endurance? Absolutely, but not like holding the weight on one leg for 3. I call them leg swings. So that gives you some choices there. You can switch it up. You might like one way or the more than the other and just leave it at that and do that. The main thing is we're moving that hip, getting that hip stretched and warmed up for our Tai Chi movements. So that's our first hip stretch. The next one The seated version and the standing version, I think, are great for everybody. Let me show you the standing version while I'm standing. I'm going to shift the weight to one leg. I'm going to tap that toe out, bring it back, shift the weight, tap out, bring it back. Okay, here's the hand movements. I'm going to stack my hands like this, and I'm going to move my hands in the direction of the weight shift. So if I'm shifting to this leg, I keep my body upright. I'm not leaning into a movement, but I'm shifting as those hands go to that side, then tapping, bring it back, switch my hands, shift, tap, bring it back, switch, shift, tap, bring it back, switch, shift, tap, bring it back, switch, shift, tap, bring it back, shift, or switch, shift, tap, bring it back. That was a lot of movement, right? So if you want to skip that hand movement, keeping our bodies upright, holding your chair, this is my imaginary chair, you can shift the weight and tap out without that hand movement. Shift, tap out. Or maybe you're thinking, I don't want to lift that foot. Once I shift the weight, I'm scared to lift that foot and tap it out. I'm scared I'm going to fall. So skip the tap out. Shift the weight. Recognize that you don't have weight on this foot anymore. Then shift the weight back to it. This is such an important movement. Find your comfort level with it. If it's holding a chair and shifting the weight, even if you're not lifting the foot, or if you are, tapping it out, holding my imaginary chair, or hand movement, tap. Hand movement, tap. So that gives you some variation of the movement. Pick where you're comfortable are and make an effort to grow from there. Now the seated version, this is what I was saying, that I feel like everyone can benefit from this particular movement of seated. It's very different. So standing, we shifted the weight and tapped the foot out. But most likely, tapping the foot out is not going to be comfortable for you. You might not feel stable in your chair, or some people hips feel like they're going to pop out of place. So doesn't mean they are. It may feel like it. So what we do here is have my feet stable on the ground, and I'm going to lean my knee out, and the hip flexor is going to stretch. Bring that foot back up and lean the other knee out and feel that hip flexor stretch. Come back up. Something that you can try is having a stabilizer leg where you push this foot into the floor while this one opens up. And just see what that feels like for you. That may not be helpful. Don't push it into the floor. Just stretch that hip if that feels better for you. You can add the hands in, same as the standing one. You go in the direction of the weight shift or the stabilizer leg. Switch here. So your hands go opposite of the knee that's laying out. So this is the seated version. Now, if you have on nice, comfy stretch pants, you may be able to stretch that hip a little further. But what happens is we get very tight in our hips. We get very tight in our hips from sitting down a lot, whether that be in your living room, whether it be driving, because essentially you're seated whenever you're driving. But we get so, if if you still work and you have to go to a desk, that's really a big problem for people who work in an office. They get real tight in their hips. If your hips are really tight, that can lead you to have lower back pain. And so it's important to keep those hip flexors stretched. Your lower back may be hurting because of another issue. Could be your hips. So that's a movement that most people can do, laying that knee out. You're in control how far, and feeling that hip flexor stretch. So that's the seated version in the standing. Okay, that's for our hips. Next is for our knees. So with our knees, we have our loose fist as if we're holding an egg we don't want to break. This movement asks us to punch out. Remember, soft bend. We don't take it all the way out like Frankenstein. So our punch is opposite of the leg movement. Now standing, we shift weight and we tap that foot forward as we punch. If we're seated, it's not going to probably be comfortable to tap the toe on the ground. But what you can do is hover that foot in the air and tap that toe out in the air. Okay, so that's the seated version. Again, if you want to hold on to your chair, shift weight and tap out, you can skip that hand movement. So those are your options. Shift, lift, tap and punch, bring it back, shift, lift, tap and punch, bring it back, shift, lift, tap and punch. Don't forget to breathe, y'all. I just caught myself holding my breath. I usually tell y'all to breathe because I've caught myself not breathing. Or another secret is if I ever say one more, it's because I've lost count. I don't know how many I've done yet. I try to keep things in threes. It probably feels like a lot more right now because I'm doing all these different versions. But I want you to find what you feel most comfortable with, regardless of what I'm doing. You know, if I had multiple instructors, we could have somebody seated, somebody standing with a chair, and then someone without any assistance. But I'm just one person, so I can just show you all the things, let you make decisions. And also, if I'm ever doing it one way and you forget how to do it seated, let me know. And don't ever feel like you can't just interrupt and say it out loud. You don't have to wait for me to ask if you have questions. Always feel free and comfortable to just speak out and ask for clarification. The other one for our knees, we still have those loose fists. We're still going to do punching, but this time we're going to step forward. So I shift the weight. I take a small step forward. My feet stay flat on the ground. Both feet flat on the ground as I shift and punch. Bring it back. Feet side by side. Shift, step, shift and punch. Bring it back. Now, if you're seated, you're not going to step out from your chair. You'll fall out of your chair. So what you do for that is you push your heel out before you put your toe out. This time you're putting your heel out as you punch opposite hand and back, heel out, punch opposite hand. So standing, it's shift, step, shift and punch. Notice my body staying upright. I'm not leaning forward into that punch. Not leaning forward into that weight shift. And that's a challenge because we really want to follow that weight shift. It feels natural to lean, but we want to fight that and keep our upright posture. So you see how much weight shifting we're doing here? We're shifting side to side and we're shifting front and back. So that really works the muscles of our legs and hips, of course, our knees, to be well-rounded and strong. So I'm telling y'all, weight shift, however you can make weight shifting happen, that's where things will happen for you. All right, now we're to our ankles. So there's no hand movements. We shift our weight to one leg and we go heel, toe, heel, toe. So we're rocking that foot, heel, toe. Bring it back, shift the weight, heel, toe. If you do this seated, you can do all kinds of things with your ankles from a seated position. What I do recommend, though, is to scoot back in your chair just a little bit so that your chair supports your legs, or else it takes a whole lot of leg muscle to lift your legs up. But you can lift both feet in the air and rock heel, toe in the air. You can do like windshield wipers to cover the second one that I'll do in a minute standing. You can do full out circles. You can do one foot at a time. You can do both at the same time. So when you're seated and your legs are being supported by your chair, you can really work that ankle joint. This helps the stiffness that happens with our ankles. So if you ever find yourself seated a lot, maybe you think about church, if you rock those ankles side to side in a circle, even if you're tapping them on the floor, rocking them like this, that helps circulation in your legs. So just remember that movement. But standing, the second ankle movement is shift the weight, big toe, little toe. So we're going side to side. Shift and then little toe, big toe. My ankles are good and stretched from all that standing and seated. Now, if you have problems with balance, instead of holding your hands in front of you, that's a great opportunity to just hold on to your chair. And that way you don't have to worry about twisting your ankle. If you were to lose your balance and fall into an ankle that's turned, you may hurt yourself. So don't ever be ashamed or afraid to just use your chair, use another stable surface that helps make you feel safer. So you can do that movement without fear that you're going to fall. So we want to find a way to do the most important parts of all these movements. Whether you're seated, whether you're standing holding a chair, or standing with a little bit of fear and worry, have something nearby that you can fall into or reach out and grab, and that's going to keep you safe. This is one of those moments when I'm glad that my space isn't real big, because I'm not far from something to lean onto or grab onto. So those are our warm-up stretches. Those are the ones we'll do every time. Do you have any questions about those? Seated, standing?
No questions for
Very
me.
good. Well, we'll get better and better at them. It may feel a little awkward now. That's okay. We'll keep working, and it's just like anything. You always feel awkward when you first start doing it, and then it gets easier and easier with practice. Remember that you have access to the YouTube page where you can rewatch class or even the specific movements. So you can get on there, and there's a video that only talks about ankles. There's a video that only talks about hips. So if there's one of those parts that you particularly want to practice and go over, there's a video with just that. All right, so let's begin our Tai Chi series of movements. And that's what Tai Chi is. It's a, excuse me, it is a set of movements that are done in a certain order. The first movement is called commencement. And the footwork of commencement is simply a step forward. We shift our weight to our right leg. We step forward with our left. We shift left and then bring that right foot forward. So it's a step forward. I want you to remember that when we step in Tai Chi, we step with an empty step. And what that means is we step, but we do not immediately give it weight. We step that foot out, pause, then shift. Bring the foot forward. It's an empty step, so there's a pause, then shift the weight to now we have weight on both feet. So our steps are empty. Shift. Empty step, now shift. Right foot forward, empty. Now even out that weight. So when you end the commencement movement, you have weight on both feet. You start with weight on both feet and you end with weight on both feet. That upright posture throughout. Shift right, step left, shift left, right foot forward. Okay? Easy enough, right? For our leg work for commencement. What's even better is our second movement, open and close, doesn't even have any footwork. Handwork of commencement. So we're going to start with, I'm going to turn to the side. We're going to start with our hands to our side. When we commence, we bring our hands up facing each other. Now remember, we're not Frankenstein. We have a soft bend in those elbows. So we come up, hands facing. We go down. The whole time our hands will face. We come in towards our hips, up close to our bodies. We push out away from our body, and then we bring those hands in. All right, so follow me on the hand movement. Our hands, remember our hands face each other the whole time. We come up, down, in, up, out, and back in. All right, let's do it again. We come up, down, in, up, out, and back in. Some people like to think of it as drawing a U. I think it's a backwards U. But if this helps you, do this. So when we come up, now we're going to draw a U. We come down, draw the U, and we go out and in. So that may help you with the smoothness of that movement. When I first teach it, I kind of chop it, make it more choppy. So we go up, down, in, up, out, and back in. But because our nature of our movement is slow, smooth, continuous, it looks nicer if we do it more like that U, where we come up, draw that U, out, in. Just don't forget, don't make any shortcuts. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I had one of my students, she couldn't figure out why she was so far ahead of me. And what she was doing was this. She came up, and then instead of coming down and in, she went at an angle. She skipped that whole part. So she was going up and then straight to the hips. So she was skipping the U. Out and in. Now you might have noticed there's a little bit of movement in my wrist. You can do that or you don't have to. But when we bring our hands up, my fingers are pointing more down. When I bring my hands down, my fingers are pointed more up. And then they kind of stick out as I finish. And then when I get at the end, my hands come up. And that prepares me for my second movement, which is open and close. So that just allows you to work that wrist a little bit. The wrist is a joint. People get arthritis in this joint. And so whenever you're moving that joint, it helps relieve some of that stiffness and inflammation that you may have there. So you move the wrist if you feel like it, don't if you don't. Those are some choices there, but that's what commencement looks like from the front. So we come up, down, draw that U, out, and back in. Open and close. Where it connects to the feet. So remember, our footwork is shift right, step left, shift left, right foot forward. Hand and feet together. We bring our hands up. Nothing happening with our feet. It's when we bring our hands down that we shift right. Step left, finish that U. Shift left as those hands go out. Right foot forward, hands come back, open and close. Again, commencement. Hands come up, down, shift right. Step left, hands come in and up. Shift left as they go out. Right foot forward, hands come back, open and close. Again, commence. Hands up, down, shift right. Step left, finish the U. Shift left as your hands go out. Right foot forward, hands come back, open and close. Do it a couple more times, then we'll cool down. And commence. Hands up, down, shift right. Step left, hands come in and up. Shift left as they go out. Right foot forward, hands come back, open and close. One more time, commence. Hands up, down, shift right. Step left, finish that U. Shift left as the hands go out. Right foot forward, hands come back, open and close. That's the first two movements of our Tai Chi series of movements. So we're making great headway for our second class, right? So every class we'll learn and practice, and then we'll cool down. And our first cool down is punching our thighs. Punching our thighs helps break up lactic acid. If you're not used to transferring weight, you may get sore from this class, and the soreness comes from the buildup of lactic acid. So this helps bust that up. It helps with the soreness. Kind of like a little massage, a little fist massage. And you can punch other parts, but a part of our cool down from Dr. Lamb just asked to do our thighs. But you can come back here too. Wherever you're sore, do a little fist massage. Next is gathering tension and then letting it go. Reminding ourselves what tension feels like, and that tension can lead to pain, letting it go and knowing we may have less pain because we're not holding tension. Gather tension and release. Gather and release. One more time. Gather and release. Big shoulder circle. Come up just like we did before. Push down. Inhale up. And push down. Now we have our right fist, that loose fist that represents our strength. Our left fingers all together representing our friendship. Our thumb in representing our humility. So strength, friendship, and humility, we put those together, and in mutual respect, we say namaste.
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 Thank y'all so much. We made some good headway today, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I feel a lot more
I'm doing
comfortable
better.
this week. Ma'am,
I'm doing better.
good. That's all we ever ask is just make your progress. Remember that we're not in competition with each other. We just do the best that we can do, right?
Right.
I'll upload the video to YouTube for you to use if you need it. And if you need me in the meantime, you know my number. Just give me a call and I'll do whatever you need to get help, okay?
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Love y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.